Welcome to In Studio from Simply Timeless. I'm your host, J. Dan Hughes. Earlier this year, Danish jazz vocalist Sinne Eeg released her 9th album, We've Just Begun. She considers this project with the Danish Radio Big Band her most ambitious yet. Of course, this wasn't the first time that she performed with the big band. In fact, when she was younger, she played saxophone in her community big band. We'll hear about those and other experiences throughout her musical journey. Sinne's story begins in the village of Lemvig, Denmark.
It's a small town. It's almost, well, it's not a village, but I don't even know how many people, around 10,000 people, and it's an old fisherman's town. And it's in the western part of Denmark, very far away from Copenhagen, as far as you can get in Denmark, almost. Obviously by the sea. Actually by a fjord close to the Northern Sea. There's actually not a lot of jazz in Lemvig, but some of the old people, I'm calling my parents' generation that, they studied in the two bigger cities in Denmark in the 60s and 70s. And in those two cities, there was a lot of jazz. Ben Webster, Ed Thigpen, Dexter Gordon, all the great American musicians came to Europe and really liked Denmark especially, and some of them settled down. And so there was a great scene. And then when some of the people from my parents' generation moved out into the smaller towns to get their jobs, to begin their jobs and raise a family, they brought that music with them. My dad, he played a little bit when he was studying. In his younger years, he played double bass. Some professional gigs, and also, because it's his passion. Then he became a doctor and didn't have so much time to play, but he did it as a hobby as I was growing up. And we also had a big record collection in my home, with all the great stuff, Miles Davis, Oscar Peterson, some Yusef Lateef, Charles Lloyd, Ella Fitzgerald, great stuff. Also pop music, ABBA and the Beatles and stuff like that. But I think the jazz was the main music maybe in our home. So I think that's how I got a taste for it.
Did you have any siblings growing up?
Yeah, older brother. Well, he was actually not as interested in music as I was. I played music from when I was 4, I started taking music lessons. He's 8 years older than me, but he didn't show any interest until one day he was, I think, 15 years old or 14 years old. There had been a concert in his school. A saxophone player came and did a jazz concert, and he was just, I need to play the saxophone. And then my parents said, yeah, you can play the saxophone, but you need to play the piano first. So he started studying piano for a couple of years, and then they helped him finance a saxophone. He worked the whole summer to be able to buy that with the help from my parents, and then he started playing. And in the meantime, I was playing piano and recorder, and I always looked very much up to him. So when he started playing the saxophone, that's what I wanted to do also. So I started when I became a teenager. I started playing the saxophone.
An alto sax was your primary instrument at the time.
I wanted to play the tenor, of course, like my brother, but they gave the alto saxophones to all the girls.
Why do you think that was, Sinne?
Because I don't know, they thought, oh, that's a big instrument to handle. You need a lot of air. It's typical. And actually, I never really liked that. I never really loved the alto saxophone. I love when Cannonball Adderley plays it, but they should have given me a tenor. Maybe I would have stuck with it. But I played a lot in big bands. My dad played in the local big band, and my brother started when he began playing. And so I grew up, listening to them play. And it was an amateur big band. but they played, all the easy arrangements, maybe they were a little altered, the Neil Hefti stuff and, all the classic big band stuff. So I kind of grew up listening to that. And then when I joined the big band, I played it myself. And I think playing that music just really created a kind of a foundation for me musically, sitting in the middle of an orchestra, hearing the voicings, the rhythmic phrasing. I think that was a very valuable time for me to develop my ears and the the feeling of like what is this music supposed to sound like? How did they build it?
You mentioned some of the classic arrangements that you were playing from, say, Neil Hefti and others. Did you listen to some of the big bands from the swing era, say like the Glenn Miller and Artie Shaw variety?
Well, I think I listened mostly to Count Basie's orchestra and Duke Ellington. I actually didn't, put on records that much, except for example, I really loved the Atomic Basie. That was not actually what I put on the record player when I wanted to hear music, but just like being a part of a band playing that. And of course, it's like when you grow up and you meet, professional big bands, you hear like, oh, that's how it's supposed to sound.
Yes, so, I've done that too, yeah.
And then luckily, as I became a better singer, I got the opportunity to actually sing with some of the really, really top big bands in Denmark, and that was really fantastic. When you're used to sitting there and the standing in front of a big band that's actually in tune and precise.
It's a lovely thing to have, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just fun. No matter what level you play music on, you learn something from it and you have fun with it. So I have a big respect for amateur bands.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more about the big band influence, especially as it relates to your latest album. We've talked about a lot of your instrumental skills, which, most people may not be aware of how extensive of experience you have as an instrumentalist. You started taking piano lessons when you were 4, which I've talked to several people, and yeah, it surprises me how many people start at such a young age, at 3 or 4. I didn't start till I was like 7 at the piano.
Yeah, well, okay, I have to say I didn't start studying the piano at that age.
Okay.
Actually, in Denmark, they are very much aware of, the development of children and in the music education. So, when you're 3-4 years old, you start in groups and you get like percussion instruments, and you can maybe play the what's it called, xylophone?
Xylophone, yes.
Xylophone, yeah. And you sing and you dance and you play. And then at some point when you are maybe 5, you can have a flute, a pentatonic flute, because that's what they think you can kind of cope with at that age. And Then you kind of start to learn to read music at that time when you get that simple flute. And then after a couple of years, they give you a recorder. And then you learn more advanced music reading. Yeah. And then, but at the same time, we had a piano at home, so I was, of course, playing a little bit. And my father showed me a lot of stuff on the piano. For example, how to put chords to a melody, because I was always very fascinated by him sitting at the piano. He could just like play any melody and just play the chords. And it's like, how do you know where to put your fingers? Like, why, how? And he was actually very cool. He said, okay, so we take like a very simple melody with 3 chords. And he said that like the very simple melodies, sometimes they just have 3 chords, and it's usually these. So it's C major, F major, G major, and try to figure out when do you think they should shift, listen to the melody. And okay, that was not too difficult. And then after a while, like we became a little more advanced, and okay, sometimes it's not an F major, it's a D minor. the parallel, you know. So I kind of build up a little bit of knowledge, and it was not like piano lessons, but it's like how to use the piano.
You mentioned having a record of Ella Fitzgerald in the vinyl collection. There were several other women who helped influence you with regard to your singing talents. Who were some of those women, and how did they influence you? How did they impact your talents?
I remember, well, the first singer that I really noticed that I really liked the sound of was Sarah Vaughan. I think actually my mother asked me when I was very young, like, so who do you prefer? Like Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, or Sarah Vaughan? Or I said, no, I like Sarah Vaughan because I think I just loved she was so mellow, and just the sound of her voice was just So it's not, you know, I didn't think about how is she phrasing, or like how inventive is she, how is she improvising. That's like something I started noticing later when I started dealing with music, you know, in a more like professional or advanced way, when I started improvising. So depending on what kind of level I was at the certain time, I've been looking at different singers. So I remember when I started singing, I think I started around the age of 18. I got an album with Cannonball Adderley and Nancy Wilson. And that, because she was singing in a way that was like so, I mean, I had never heard anything like it when I because my parents didn't know her. It was a guy in a record store who recommended her because my parents told the guy that, oh, our daughter is starting to sing, and maybe she should get a Frank Sinatra album. And I said, no, give her a Nancy Wilson. And I heard it, and I was just shocked. Wow, what a way to use your voice, and the timing, the sense of rhythm, and it was so far from how I use my voice. You know, I had been singing a little bit in the Danish church, and we kind of, it's always like, oh, very classical. And to hear that way of using your voice was so much an inspiration, and that made me sing in a whole other way for a while. And I just tried to copy everything she did, and then I started listening to Carmen McRae. That was also like it's so much body in, you know, in the way that she and Nancy Wilson sings. And then I discovered Betty Carter when I was getting more into improvising, because I just like, wow, the crazy stuff she does. How does she come up with it? So that, I mean, it depends on what kind of phase you're going through, I think.
You couple that with your instrumental experience, and you went on to further your studies at the Music Conservatory of West Jutland. Tell me about the school. I'm not familiar with the school, but also tell me what your focus was there too.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's a very small school. And it's actually, at that time, it was mainly classical. It was not very far from the town where I grew up. So it was just like a less than 2-hour drive. There were big conservatories in Copenhagen and Aarhus that are the biggest cities in Denmark. But I kind of felt like, nah, I'll never get in, you know, because it's a tough audition, and it's very, very few people get accepted. And you have to be at a pretty high level to begin this education. So I thought, I think I will probably never be able to get into a music conservatory. But then I met a piano player who was actually studying in West Jutland, and he said, just go to the audition, man. Like, I'll play, I'll accompany you, and I know some guys there, they'll be happy to play. And so I just did it, and then I got accepted. So I didn't give it much thought, that I didn't know this town at all. It's actually, it doesn't have a very good reputation, but it's kind of known to be a very interesting town but I loved it. It was the nicest school with a very tight little community, and the town for me, because I came from a small town, it had cafes and bars, and I was like, wow, this is a big city.
Yeah.
Because I had never lived in Copenhagen, so it was perfect timing for me. And there was, in my year, in the rhythmic, we call it the rhythmic program, and not jazz, because you can play pop music too. I think we were like 7 students who got accepted, and we formed a band. So that's the whole year. So there was only one singer, that was me, and so you get a lot of attention. And you get a lot of challenges, because sometimes people want to play some music that you maybe wouldn't have thought of, but you're the only singer there, so you just have to learn it. So I got to sing some pop music too, which I was not interested in that at all, but I did it, and I really learned from it. So it was really a nice place to study.
And you graduated from there in 2003.
Yeah.
Who were some of your mentors and teachers that you had at the conservatory?
The reason also why I was kind of curious to even audition there, it was because there was a guy called Butch Lacey, who was, he's an American piano player, and he moved to Denmark in the 80s after touring with Sarah Vaughan for I don't know actually how many years he did that, but he toured with her, and he lived in San Diego for quite some years, and had a big impact on the San Diego jazz scene. And he was a hero in Denmark. He was this guy who came from over there and just like had this energy and was so creative. And I had the opportunity to work with him a few times with a big band, the amateur big band. He would come and give us like a masterclass, a workshop. And it was like, whoa, this guy, man. I need to learn from him. So that was one of the main reasons that I actually started at that school. And he was very important to me. Already from year 1, I was lucky to get this, the singer seat in the big band at the school that he was conducting. So already from year 1, I learned from him, and then he had all these kinds of classes that were just like, we don't really know what it is, but it's just Butch. So we'll see what happens.
And certainly those experiences, the mentorship that you got from him, they certainly played an important part in your career. And fill in the gap for me. Did you immediately begin performing as a full-time musician once you graduated, or were there other things that led you to go on the road?
I was unemployed. Well, I graduated, and I could tell that if you want to pursue a career, you really have to work on it. And you have to spend a lot of time, first of all, create a product that people get, so people have a chance to figure out who you are. So you need a CD. And you need to spend a lot of time emailing people who will never reply, or ask you to email again later, and call, and so I knew if I got a full-time job somewhere, I probably wouldn't have a chance. Sure. So I was kind of unemployed. I was a substitute teacher at a music school, so I made some money. But at that time, we were so lucky in Denmark. If we were unemployed, we could get some funding from the government. I mean, of course, if you made money, they would deduct that. So if you only made like 2/3 of what you need to make a living, they would give you the rest, because they thought, okay, it's a good investment. You want to build up something. You can't do that anymore. I was so lucky because I could really focus on trying to get gigs. And in the beginning, I moved to Copenhagen, and I didn't really, I didn't have any connections. So it was so slow. I mean, the first year, I think I had 2 gigs. And then I kept driving back to the West Coast sometimes to work gigs there, but it was slow. So I slowly started playing in a club called La Fontaine, which is like almost like an epicenter in Copenhagen for young musicians. It's a fantastic club. They kind of discovered me, and I started to gig there. And then as things were starting to kind of build up, and people had heard about me a little bit and started to call me for gigs, then we got this phone call from China asking me and the guys I played with to come over and play for 3 months. The first CD that I did was, of course, to get started.
Yes.
And my piano player friend who encouraged me to apply for the music conservatory, his brother lived in Shanghai, and he handed out these CDs to some clubs, and we thought maybe if we're lucky we can put a tour together in China, and then they called from this club and they wanted us to go for 3 months just to play in their club, 6 nights a week, 3 sets every night. So we kind of, I'm not doing much here, so I can go, and so we gathered the band and we left. That was the most amazing 3 months in my life, I think.
How did that impact the rest of your career?
Well, you learn so much from just being able to perform every night and just play, sing. You get chops, that, and you need them. I learned on so many different levels. Of course, my vocal technique developed because I was actually using my voice on a stage, figuring out what can it do if I use my voice this much. How does it affect it? I mean, am I doing the right thing? Sometimes we needed to kind of play soft. I mean, we could play soft and be really artsy-fartsy, because sometimes there wouldn't be much of an audience. Like, for example, Tuesday night around midnight, it was only the hardcore jazz lovers in the audience. And then Friday night, people just wanted to drink, and it was noisy. So, I mean, we didn't want to, play the saga of Harrison Crab Feathers, while people were shouting and drinking. So we kind of, we got to dig in our repertoire and find the more soul jazz things, the bluesy things, the groovy things. And I figured out, that was a good training for my voice to figure out, how do you burn through a crowd like that? and you need a lot of energy, to be on top of a party like that. These days, it's very rare that you get the opportunity of performing that much, especially in the beginning of your career. A lot of musicians, they never really get that experience and the chops that follows, because each gig is like a hunt. You have to hunt down each gig.
You have to kind of stalk the prey, kind of watch over them for a little bit, email them, call them, and then finally you might get a call back. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. With a polite no.
And it's amazing. We have a tagline at Simply Timeless, a journey of musical discovery. And I love to follow the journeys of artists who use each of the experiences that they gather along their own journey, and it culminates at a certain point. And right now, we're talking about your latest album, your 9th album, as a matter of fact. It's been heralded as probably one of your most ambitious projects thus far. And it takes quite a few of these experiences that you've mentioned. But specifically, I think there is one thing you have to your advantage, and that is your years of performing in a big band, not as a vocalist, but as an instrumentalist in the band. The name of the album is We've Just Begun, and it features the Danish Radio Big Band. I want to start off with this question. We've discussed your playing alto sax in amateur big bands during your teen years. How did those big band experiences help prepare you for this particular project?
I have a feeling for the DNA of a big band, I guess, and a big passion for big band music, and a big respect for musicians in general, but especially big band musicians. And I have just filled this project with love and respect for this marvelous band that we are lucky to have in Denmark. And I have been so concerned about collecting the songs and having the arrangements the way I like them and the way I hoped, and kind of also had a good feeling that they would like them. Because it's so important for me that the big band enjoy playing this music, because there are also, I mean, there's also boring big band music. I really wanted it to be a fun project for everybody, and that's also why I have been very, careful, like who I asked to arrange the music, and I've been working very closely with the arrangers.
I'm going to ask you an exam-style question for this. Can you compare and contrast some of the differences, because you've worked with a small jazz combo for many years on the road? Can you explain some of the differences between creating a sound with an ensemble, a small combo, as compared to creating a sound that's cohesive with a big band?
Yeah, I mean, when you play with a small ensemble, the small ensembles that I gather, we are very open-minded. I mean, we don't play free jazz, but we are always our ears are always on each other, and everybody's ready to react and respond. So the music, like when we look at the set list and take each tune, actually they can go anywhere. They don't always do that. So, I mean, a lot of times we play the songs, almost like yesterday, or, I mean, that's an option, but we can do something completely different. And that's like that's freedom. And with the big band, it's more like the whole arrangement is written, it's rehearsed, every little detail, you kind of improve and improve and improve, change a little bit here and there from day to day. Like, I think it would work better if we have a subito piano here on this chord, and all the creation of the music is more in the composing and arranging phase, where you have to imagine how would this feel once we're out on stage. Like, does this really give the energy that we're looking for? This arrangement that we're trying to create, does it call for the emotions that we want, in the listener?
The songs that are included on this album come from varied backgrounds. Some are what you would call jazz standards that are well known, not only in Denmark to jazz fans, but also in the States and around the world. There is also an adaptation of a tune from a vintage Danish film. But best of all, there are also some of your own compositions on this album, and I think that's a wonderful feat. In fact, the title track, We've Just Begun, is one that you did collaborate on as a part of the songwriting process. How did you arrive to pick these particular songs that are included on the album?
First of all, I have a huge catalog of big band arrangement that has been written for me over the years. Very, very nice arrangements. So I could I could just have chosen, a bouquet of already made arrangements that I knew worked. And I kind of did, because I for some part of the album, because I had some arrangements that I just, this is a masterpiece. For example, the Danish song that we play, that arrangement is just incredible. And it has never been recorded. So I thought, this is my chance, because you don't get to record with a professional big band every day, So I had a few that I really knew that now I have the chance, I want to put them on the album. I basically just like a good song, so I don't really care about if it's a standard jazz repertoire, if it's a pop song, if it's an old Danish song. And also when it comes to my own compositions, I don't really care if the songs on the record are my own or not. So I don't want to just record anything that I write. I want it to be, I want it to feel as good to sing as, the classic songs. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Because these songs have survived so many years and they're written by the masters. So it's like, how can I ever write something that is equally nice to sing? So that's why I spend a lot of time working on my own material too, and I throw away a lot. And also I wanted to choose compositions of mine that I knew would be nice, in a big band arrangements, because I also write a lot of songs that maybe not as, natural big band songs,
And there is a certain ebb and flow throughout this album, because you do have your up-tempo swing, but then there are those that have more of an R&B feel. But there's even a samba included on this album. In fact, that is one of your compositions. This is your 9th album overall. There have been several others. How would you say that it defines your current point in your career?
I actually don't know, because I have been wanting to make this project for quite a few years, and now I finally made it happen. Thanks to the Danish Radio Big Band, who was willing to do this project with me. Because I could also have done it like 5 years ago, but then again, 5 years ago I didn't have the experience that I have now. But who knows how it would have come out? I don't know. A big band album is something that had to happen for me. In a way, there is a development in my singing and what I focus on, and I guess you can hear it on this album from time to time. But it's also just like a thing that could have happened here or here. It just had to happen.
And I realize that right now we're not able to be in front of people in the traditional sense. We're not able to go have live concerts. It may be a while. But you mentioned that when with the big band especially, does this have a certain energy? Does this have a certain pulse that comes along with this arrangement and performance? When you are performing for an audience, what is the experience? What is the energy that you receive from them during a performance? How does that impact your work?
Oh, it means so much. I notice it because now I've tried to record in the studio so many times. And it's clear to me that it's so difficult for me to get inspired without an audience.
Yes.
And that's, a lot of people probably can get inspired, but it's so difficult. That's the hardest thing about making a recording. That's that the audience is not there. I think because they sit there and they have chosen to spend their evening or afternoon just looking and listening to you, and you have to respect that and be humble about that. You got to give them something, and that need to give something is a great inspiration, because you want to project emotions, you want to see them smile when you pour out a certain type of energy, and there's nothing better than to catch a tear in somebody's eye. It gives you so much. And sometimes you have an audience that is not that doesn't respond that much, and you have a hard time reading them. That can be difficult. But then maybe in the break between two sets, somebody say, "Oh, it's the best thing I ever heard." Okay. They like it. I just can't see it, but I know they. Then you.
I've had that happen. There was a crowd that was just kind of like this the whole time, and then afterward they come up and they're giving me hugs and kisses. They're like, "That was just wonderful. It made my entire day." People respond differently. That they do. And you say that the audience has given you so much. Music has given you so much over the years. One final thought. It's a question that one of my professors would ask in our music education classes. And it's my final question for you. Why music?
I think it's because that's the language that was given to me. It's what makes sense and ties everything together in my life. You know, that's the language where I can communicate with people. I'm not a good writer, or, you know, I can't give a speech really well. You know, there's a lot of things I can't, but music, I feel like I have a direct connection when music starts in my head, and then, you know, creating a sound and the space between my mouth and people's ears is like it flows. There's always music in my head, and it always comes to me. So that's why, because it's there, you know, it has always been.
Sinne Eeg, our guest for this week's In Studio from Simply Timeless. The name of the album is We've Just Begun. You can find out more information about the album at her website, Sinne, SINNE, music.com. Special thanks to Sinne for taking the time to visit with us this week, and a special thanks to you for sharing your time with us also. Until we meet again, I'm Jay Daniels. Thanks for listening to In Studio.